So Jared went undercover with Antifa. Jared, number one, I don't want you to give away too many details, obviously. Tell us what you can. So how did you get in with Antifa in the first place?
It starts with we have a brilliant researcher. So he's been spending months and months infiltrating them from the back end. So this all starts, they really, like any terrorist organization in 2017, they used social media, they used online platforms to really kind of grow their network of people. And just so happens they're so desperate for people to show up to these things, they're eager to welcome new people into the fold. So, we infiltrated from the back end over the course of months, creating fake profiles, creating fake names and usernames to infiltrate them with the messages and kind of find out where they're going to be, how to meet up with them, how to be involved. So that's really where the root of the work takes place. And then so I show up looking like a douchebag just to be there the few days of the event. So that's really where the magic happens. It's all on the back end of things.
Okay, so the first time they saw you was in the day before the event, a couple days before the event.
Yes.
Is that okay? So you threw on a wig, you threw on some contact. When I saw you, got to be real, I was a little freaked out. I mean, that's normal when people see you, but then when you're actually dressed up as an Antifa member, it's just
Exactly.
that much more. So what was it like talking to these folks? Were they nice to you? Were they? Could you tell that they were weirdos right off the bat? Do they seem like sort of mainstream leftists gone wrong, or do they seem like crazies who have glommed onto leftism?
On first impression with them was kind of just normal lefty crazy people. So they, I met up with this person, excuse me, in a Starbucks cafe to get the app installed on my phone. In fact, when I first met up with him, I asked, "Hey, this is what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a gray shirt, gray hat. What are you wearing?" He said, it said gray shirt, gray hat. So we had a lot in common right off the bat. We looked almost identical to each other sitting across the table. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like, this seems like a normal crazy, normal crazy leftist person. I mean, they were very friendly with me. They were very welcoming. The guy gave me his last shiv. So I assume he had my best interest at heart, and he told me to keep his ice pick. So I really thought these were just normal, everyday leftist crazy people until he started talking about the violent measures they had taken to ensure their success of the night. So that's kind of the tip-off for me is when they really start talking about game plan, where they were keeping stashes of guns, how many guns and what kind they had showing up to this event. So that's really where the tip-off for me that these are not just normal crazy people. These are an extra dose of liberal crazy with nothing to lose.
So did they see themselves as using violence in retaliation to violence, or do you think that these were people who are looking to initiate violence, like they were actually going to go and start stabbing people or punching people without provocation?
I think the people with nothing to lose are looking for any excuse to be violent. So they showed up, they proactively gave me knives, they proactively gave me ice picks. When we started talking about, because I asked them, hey, what other groups do we have showing up to this event? And they are really good at coordinating these things with other organizations and activists. So they listed off, they said, Lex Scott, Black Lives Matter, they're going to be here doing this. And these other socialist organizations are going to come here and do this. And they actually mentioned one of them. I can't remember the name of the organization, but they said these activists are going to come up, but they're pacifist. They're not going to fight, is what they told me. We have this on camera. This will all be coming out in raw footage soon, if it's not up already. But yeah, so they distinguish themselves as people who are willing and ready to fight and be violent.
So one of the things that's happened in the aftermath of this is you got out of there after they offered you weapons. You said you had to go to the bathroom, a brilliant tactical move, and went directly to the police. And the police arrested these folks.
Also, I really had to poop.
Well, okay, so then it was just a twofer. So you went to the police, and the police apparently arrested these people, but then released them. And then I guess one of the people got arrested again later that night for getting in a fight. Is that correct?
That's what I'm told. I know what I know for sure is Honeybee, her code name Jenna. She was in fact arrested later that night for aggravated assault. So she was the one who actually gave me the knife earlier that night. She wanted her knife back later that night. I told her police have it. They're looking for you. Run. But she was in fact and this is something that Fox 13, I believe, of Utah. They're trying to discredit the entire story, saying there was no real threat that night. But then later in the piece, they talk about people in our videos, people involved in our hidden cam sting, giving out knives were arrested later that night for aggravated assault, and that's all in footage as well. So it's like, pick your story. Which one are you going to go with? Was there no lethal threat at all, or were people arrested? Because your story contradicts itself.
So the police apparently also released a statement saying that they don't think that there was a credible threat of violence from these people, despite the tape that you had turned over. And it looks like one of the spokespeople for the police was a politically motivated actor. What do we know about that?
We're looking into that more. we will be releasing segments on that. Here's the thing about the police too that you got to remember. Not only activism aside, they want to make sure that they put on a good face, that they did a good job, and you were there. I mean, there were hundreds of them. There were SWAT people on the rooftops. You saw this for yourself. And it's something to remember about police as well, because we've been dealing with actually detectives who have been working on this case. And by the way, detectives who, once they saw my footage, they recognized half the people in it. They've been on to them for a while. So you got to remember, detectives and cops like this, it's almost like going to the doctor. You try to go to the doctor, get one thing resolved, and they just send you to another specialist who refers you to another specialist. It's 3 doctors down the line before you get anything resolved. So that's kind of how the police department works. There are a lot of departments who one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So while one hand might say, earnestly say that there was no threat, as far as they know, there's detectives working on other cases who are saying, yeah, these people are bad people and we're trying to weed them out, and this footage is being used to help do that as we speak right now.
So how widespread is the network? Because it's going to be the left trying to pretend that this is a couple of isolated actors, that it's not a big deal, that you just sort of stumbled into the most violent or the worst of these people. But how big is the network, and what do we know about how deep it goes?
It's really hard to say, because it's really hard to estimate the size of Antifa because of the way they, first of all, the way they've gone underground to recruit people it's almost impossible to track. But we do know we have people from Antifa California saying that we didn't infiltrate the real Antifa. So, of course, that only makes their case worse, because if these weren't the real violent ones, the ones with AK-47s and cabana knives in their car, then which ones are the ones with the tear tattoo who have full auto machine guns in their cars? Which ones are the real ones? So it's really hard to estimate though how deep it is and how really connected they are across the network of the country. We do know they work really intentionally within their cities to recruit and to grow their organization, their activists, as fast and as broadly as possible. That's why they were so eager to have me be a part of them. They were chipper to have me show up and be a part of their big project.
So Not Gay Jared was the one who infiltrated Antifa, and Steven Crowder is the guy for whom he produces. Jared, thanks for doing the hard work here and letting Steven take all the credit. That's always awesome.
That's our biggest fear in life, is going down the flames of glory just for the headline to read, Steven Crowder and some other guy died on the front lines.
Well, what you did was actually pretty brave, going undercover with some of the worst people in America, and thank you for that. And I personally thank you for that, since it was at the event that was being held at my speech. So, thanks for protecting me. You guys had my back, so I appreciate it. Jimmy Kimmel was back last night. And Jimmy Kimmel is not backing down off of his "I am holier than you are. I care more about people who died. Therefore, you must agree with me." Here's what he had to say last night to critics like me, who said that his gun monologue last night was factually incorrect.
I'm not going to get deep into it again tonight. I said what I had to say last night, but I do want to say something to these nuts who spent most of the day today on television and online attacking those of us who think we need to do something about the fact that 59 innocent people were killed. They say it's inappropriate to be...
Okay, so first of all, we didn't spend yesterday attacking people who think that something has to be done. We attacked you for attacking Americans and saying that Americans are basically a bunch of dunder-headed, cruel jackasses if they don't agree with you on policy. I mean, if you actually want to propose a policy, we can talk about the policy. What I said in the minutes after the shooting is, how about we get all the information on the shooting and then we talk policy? That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. Now, I'm not saying we should never talk policy. I'm saying we should talk policy once the information is in. Why is this a difficult concept? Evidence. Information. But again, Kimmel is strawmanning here. He's basically suggesting that all of us who criticized him we just don't want to do anything, and that's why we're criticizing him. No, I'm criticizing you because what you're saying is factually incorrect, and then you're implying that those of us who want evidence to back our policies are somehow cruel and nasty. Okay, he continues.
Talking about it because it's too soon. Well, maybe it's too soon for you, because deep down inside, in your heart, you bear some responsibility for the fact that almost anyone can get any weapon they want. Now you want to cover yourself until the storm of outrage passes. You can go back to your dirty business as usual, but it's not too soon for us, because we're Americans, and last time I checked, the First Amendment is at least as important as the Second Amendment. So we really talk about it.
Okay. Jimmy, I mean, seriously, this is egregious stuff. I hope you're a better person than this, but this is really egregious stuff. If I didn't think you were a better person than this, I'd tell you to go to hell, because that's ridiculous, okay? For you to suggest, go back to your dirty business. What's my dirty business? The same business as yours, okay? Exercising my First Amendment rights to talk about policy and politics. Okay? The idea that it's a dirty business if we disagree with you. I'm not selling guns. That's not what I do. Okay? I've never sold a gun. I own 2 of them. I have never sold a gun. I'm not in the gun sales business. And it's not a dirty business for people to be in the gun sales business selling methods of self-defense to Americans who want to defend themselves in their country. Okay, that's just insane. But the suggestion that I bear responsibility for Vegas, the only person who bears responsibility for Vegas is the guy who's pulling the trigger on a bunch of people who are innocent standing below. If we're going to do that routine now, if we're going to suggest that we bear responsibility for our public policy choices with regard to gun control, then I would suggest that Jimmy Kimmel bears responsibility for every dead baby that he backs through Planned Parenthood. Okay, there's a significantly greater connection between that. Planned Parenthood's sole goal is to kill babies. You know, the goal of selling rifles is not to kill innocent people. But I don't do that, right? I'm not saying that Jimmy Kimmel is responsible for every dead baby in the country, because that's absurd. Okay, abortionists are responsible for that. I think he's wrong on policy. I think he's probably good-hearted. For Jimmy Kimmel to suggest that everybody who disagrees with him, again, it's just so disgusting. For him to suggest that I have some sort of blood guilt on my soul, and that's why I don't want to talk about this. I've been talking about it all week, dude. I've made my bones talking about gun control and the case for and against. I know a lot more about it than Jimmy Kimmel does. And for Jimmy Kimmel to suggest that anyone who wants to talk about it who's not named Jimmy Kimmel is somehow motivated by their dirty business, their greed. I promise you, Jimmy Kimmel makes a hell of a lot more money than I do. Jimmy Kimmel's making a lot of money off a lot of leftists who think that he is just the bee's knees because he does this kind of stuff. So if we're going to talk about who's making more money off political pandering, Jimmy, I don't think that's a business you want to get into. Yeah, but it's not just Kimmel. Even more objective journalists like Chuck Todd are suggesting that, it's just a fear of talking about gun control that's led to this impasse.
Folks, there's no doubt about what the Second Amendment does say. But at what point does a person's right to bear arms start infringing on his neighbor's right to live safely and freely? And if you've ever caught yourself checking the exits while at a concert hall or a school assembly or a movie, just in case, you probably already are ready to have that conversation. You would think our leaders should be able to have it too.
Well, again, I think there's actually a pretty easy answer to when does my neighbor's right to bear arms impinge on my ability to live freely, and it's when he starts shooting at me. And that's a pretty simple answer. I mean, that's like saying, when does your neighbor's right to own a sword impinge on your right not to be chopped? Well, when he starts trying to chop me. Again, I think there are arguments to be made about what sorts of machine guns have been banned in the United States since 1986. I think that's reasonable. But, but this suggestion that we have not been having the conversation we have is just the left is angry because they've been losing, because they don't have any evidence to support their positions. It's just infused the entire culture. You can't even watch sports anymore without this routine. Rachel Nichols on ESPN. Again, ESPN should be staying out of this. But we remember back in 2012 when Bob Costas was doing halftime reports on the NFL, and he decided to inject his own politics. Now we've got Rachel Nichols doing this on gun control.
Officials say this is the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. A phrase I guess they're getting used to because it was only 14 months ago they were saying that about the shooting in Orlando. The Orlando shooting claimed more lives than Virginia Tech. Now this one claims more lives than what happened in Orlando. I don't know how we're going to solve the debate about guns in this country. I just know that while we're all arguing, the body counts keep going up. And more
so we have to stop arguing, you see. We have to stop arguing is what she's saying. And the only way to stop arguing is for us to agree with her. I do love that the talking points for Chuck Todd and Rachel Nichols are nearly identical with regard to these mass shootings. As I said yesterday, using mass shootings as your gauge of gun control policy is actually a foolish idea because they're not representative of the broader whole. I'm not the only one saying that. 538 says that, okay? Nate Silver's site says that. Nate Silver is no right-winger on guns. And then, of course, you have the greatest of all political commentators of the left, Keith Olbermann. So he attacked me on Twitter this morning. I had said yesterday who made Jimmy Kimmel the moral arbiter. And Keith Olbermann tweeted, because whores like real Donald Trump, the GOP, and Ben Shapiro have sold their souls to the NRA and the death cult. Any other questions, kid? So a few things. Number one, is the suggestion that every single person in the United States who owns a gun and believes in gun rights is part of a death cult? Because I think that, again, death cults could be more properly attributed to people who think that Planned Parenthood is doing wonderful work in killing babies. But I actually did have some questions for Keith Olbermann that I tweeted back at him. Questions like, if you are so good at your job, why have you been fired from your last 3,297 jobs? Also, was it his expertise in shouting things like En Fuego that gave him the godlike ability to see into other people's souls? Was it that? And also, where did he get his glasses? Because those are actually kind of nice. And then also, is he just okay? Is he okay? Because he doesn't seem okay, Keith Olbermann. But this is the entire moral equation the left wants to set up, and I just find it despicable. I find it gross. Okay.